What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Rumi Ryan, here for Black Author Brand Presents Author Spotlight. If y'all can't tell already, I am so excited about this interview. And to everybody who I've already interviewed, I'm sorry. You're just not going to be my favorite because I don't shoot the messenger. No, I'm just playing. I have thoroughly enjoyed the interview so far, but this one I'm really excited about. Some of you, if you know, you know. But those of you all who don't know Dwayne B, aka Crochet Kingpin, you will soon understand my excitement once you understand who is on the line. So wherever you are, whether you're watching or listening, I want you to open your hearts and open your minds and put your hands together even for one of the dopest creative Black men I know, Dwayne B, aka Crochet Kingpin. What's up, Dwayne?
Bless up, bless up. I'm over here blushing. Word to that intro. Word to you, Rumi. Know what I'm saying?
Thank you, man.
Incredible creative, also creating space for these types of dialogue. So I'm grateful that you hit me up and said, "Hey, let's make this magic happen." So yeah,
absolutely. I remember when I met you. I tell people this all the time. Well, I only tell it to the people that it applies to, but there are certain people that just sparkle to me. And since our first encounter, you just stand out to me. And as I have grown into your work, into all that you do, I know now why. I have some context with why you've always stood out to me. And you two watching, y'all understand as we get into it. So I like to start light, and it's really not light. But Dwayne, why do you write?
Starting light. Yeah. I feel like, especially in these times that we're going through in this here 2025, we need to really lean into why we're doing things. I've also been asking myself, okay, when I am writing, why am I writing in this particular medium? Why am I writing in this particular format? And like, what is the purpose behind all of it? And it all comes down, like, if I boil down all of the creative stuff I'm involved in, it comes down to, I want to be safe, and I want to create a safer space for my child to live and exist and thrive. And in doing that, I am creating a safer space for myself and for others. Yeah, I think that's really why I write. I started writing when I was 13 years old, or probably honestly before then, writing things that I imagined I'd probably share in different spaces. Right. I started writing around 13. And a lot of that has been around like writing down and documenting who I am and the life that I live and my community and where we're from. And if we don't document our own history, then it does not get documented. That's really where a lot of that horror came from. It's like, yo, like, I think about my elementary school, right? My elementary school is the only school that I still have still standing. My middle school is a Trader Joe's and condos. My high school is a parking lot. My hospital I was born in is a Trader Joe's and condos. And so if I don't talk about the history, then it won't exist, especially here in DC. You can look at anybody's past 20 years and many of those buildings don't exist. Many of those establishments no longer exist. You know, you go back 30 years, even more, go back 50 years, street names have changed. I'll never forget. I'm on the A8 bus coming up from Anacostia Station. And if you're from the South Side in DC, you know, like, oh yeah, you on A8, you on A4, you on A6, like, yeah, you on the other side of the city, right? And there was a dude and nobody was really like talking to him. And he was just looking real confused, like older Black man. He just looked at me. I don't know. Like sometimes I'm dressed eccentric. Sometimes I'm in my goth gear. Sometimes I'm, in my good government job attire, whatever. Right. But there's something happened, right? He was like, can you tell me where Nichols Avenue is? And I was like, Nichols Ave. It just took me a minute. It took me a while. And I was like, oh, MLK Avenue got turned to Nichols Ave just before I was born. That gave me like a little bit of insight on how long this brother not been around. You know what I'm saying? Right. I was like, oh, you on Nichols Ave. It's MLK Avenue now. He was like, man, I've been asking people up and down, like just trying to figure out, because I got out. I didn't know like where I was.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's something about reentry. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we aren't creating guides for people, our work gets to be that guide. There isn't a re-entry point or like there are organizations that are doing that work. There isn't like a one-shot fix-all for people that are re-entering or trying to come back home after military service or trying to come back and like reclaim any semblance of their life after gentrification or their community is displaced. Like there's no guide, but we can be the guide through the art. And I think that that's part of my role as an artist as well.
Dwayne, I can't with you. I resonate so much with everything that you've shared. I want to ask a question. Why is safety important to you?
Whew.
I know. I said I was starting light.
that's yeah, I mean, but that's real. So safety, I've always wanted the things that I can't have. Wanting safety is part of that. Being a Black American, I feel like I am never safe. Before this interview started, I had the thought, what if somebody shoots outside and I'm right next to my window and I get killed on camera? That's honestly my biggest fear. My number one fear in life is dying on camera because I don't want my family to have to relive that and I don't want that to be exploited, right? So like, even in my core existence and belief, I end up compensating for the danger in my world. And so creating and working towards safe spaces is so important to me because I want to not have to think like that all the time. It's like having too many tabs open on the computer, and one of them is always running some high JavaScript sort of thing of like, this is how you have to be safe. This is what you have to do to protect yourself. This is how you have to move in the world so that people don't find you a threat. This is how, like, all of it's always running. And I feel like every Black person, at least in America and likely in the world, has at least some level of that running in the background because American culture is so in tune with its disdain for the other. Included in that is Blackness. It's so ingrained in the American experience and culture. It's hard to separate that. Like even well-meaning folks that would consider themselves allies or that I would consider an ally, they also have an immense capacity to harm just because of this existence in this country. In the same way that in a masculine body, I have the potential to harm. And so I have to be conscious and recognize that as well. I think that's why I think so much about safety is because I want to reduce the harm that I may potentially cause and also reduce the need for me to always think about potentially being harmed.
I agree. I do. I resonate with that. Yeah. I resonate with that so much because sometimes my writing experiences are dark. And there is this idea that writing about pain or writing about darkness will somehow bring on more darkness, or writing about the feelings of not being safe, causing you to kind of propagate not being safe. And I find that seeing my truth on the wall or on a page and out of my body, it may not make me feel safer, but it helps me recognize when I am unsafe. And it helps me feel a little more confident in spaces that are not unsafe. I'm able to use my senses because I've had time to process what fear looks like as a little girl. And so now, I have a little more reasoning when there are times of like high alert. I wonder if you find any measure of safety through your writing process.
Yeah, I also definitely felt what you were sharing. I feel like a lot of us, and I'll answer your question, but I feel like a lot of us, we may worry or be concerned about writing about the darkness that we face out of a fear of manifesting that darkness, because there is power in your words, right? And speak power to truth and like all the common phrases that we say and share where there's truth to that. But also, like you said, if we don't recognize the red flags, if we don't document the things that have harmed us, then we're not able to recognize them or remember them when we are about to face that same trauma. When we have that trauma response, we're able to look back and say, oh, I remember this. I experienced this before. I know not to be around right here. Great example. If you were ever around a fight that's about to break out, you recognize, oh, it's about to go down.
Definitely.
Let me get from around here, right? Sometimes the writing and going through the toughness in the writing is you putting that feeler out there, right? It's written. So now you know, oh, I'm feeling something that is leading me back toward that type of poem or that type of feeling. What can I do now to either avoid going through this particular situation or to mitigate the darkness that I'm about to face? At least we're able to prepare for it now versus being blindsided. Going back to your question about safety, I do find some safety in the writing. I find safety in the writing process because I've made a practice of writing every day, and whatever I'm feeling, I write it and navigate it, right? But then there is a certain level of danger in resharing a piece. And so I recognize like, oh, I might not be ready to go back into that space and share this piece. I write far more than I ever share.
Really?
Oh yeah. I host a bunch of open mics and I attend a bunch of stuff. I think I might share a third of the things that I've written. Partially because like not everything is for everybody. Not everything is for every audience. But I also think it's kind of bogus to believe that everything that you've ever written needs to be received by others. There's something to like, I create, but it is not always for an audience. Not every movie that's been made needs to be seen. You know what I'm saying? Not every book that has been written needs to be read. And not every book needs to be read by me. I think about some of our well-meaning white friends that may come to an open mic and want to do a poem that's like really, really in the intent is around creating unity and community. But when sharing those thoughts with a majority Black audience that has already, you're already in the room. So like, sometimes it just comes off wrong. And it's like, that's not the poem that I need to hear. The poem that I need to hear is maybe the apology or maybe how you are about to go talk to your white classmates and your white peers around treating people with equity, and equally and justly. I feel like we are getting to a point where folks are starting to get that, but it is an ugly process sometimes when folks get called out and when you have to be the one to call folks out, be like, actually, we get it. Tell your classmates, tell your uncle.
You hit on so many points, and I want to thank you for sharing that. And I hope y'all listening. Most of our community is comprised of up-and-coming authors and poets. And I'm sitting at the helm of Black Author Brand, usually involved in the publishing process or the development process in some way. And when I talk to authors, especially first-time authors, Dwayne, everything they have written, they want to go in that book. Everything that, and I've told several authors, just because you wrote it doesn't mean that it was for, let's say, a public format, for a hard copy piece of literature. Sis, you wrote that for you. Bruh, you wrote that for you. This doesn't even fit the format of the book, but because there is such, I think there's a stigma around that first book, particularly for African Americans, where it has to be autobiographical or it has to be some grand, all-inclusive thing. I think it speaks to our passion and highlights our deficiency in development. In my heart, there is such a passion for two things: for helping Black creatives get over the hump and actually publish. 90% of the authors who come to Black Author Brand have a book they've written has been sitting there for years, Dwayne. Like, there's a time gap. I feel like it's comprised of a lack of support, not knowing how. So getting authors over the hump to the side where we've been published.
So you want to write a book, You've been talking about it, but you just haven't done it yet. Or maybe you did start, but somewhere along the way, life got busy. Motivation dipped, and your manuscript is now collecting digital dust. Take a deep breath. You are not alone. I know it feels that way. That's exactly why I created Writers Who Finish. This is a writing program designed for real life authors, people like you, who are juggling life, work, doubt, perfectionism, procrastination, lack of support, and still feel called to write something meaningful. This is for you. Here's what you'll get inside of Writers Who Finish: a supportive writing community that just gets it. Feedback from experienced, published authors. Easy to follow frameworks for structure, pacing, and editing. Weekly assignments and motivation to fuel growth. Strategies to help you market and sell your books. Check-in calls and live group sessions to get you unstuck when you hit those rough patches. By the end of this program, you'll have clarity, confidence, and a real finished draft you can be proud of. So if you're tired of going at it alone, you're ready for some guidance and support to finally get that book out of your head and onto the page, I would love to welcome you into Writers Who Finish. Now, applications are open, spots are limited, and we're starting soon. Listen, your words matter. Let's get this done.
Once we get over here, we're going to be in spaces that are in one of three categories. They're going to be mixed spaces, spaces that are predominantly of color, and spaces that are predominantly not of color. And a lot of times our people struggle to articulate. They struggle with this moment after the book because there's some deficiency in development there. And then sometimes the content in their book, I feel like a lot of Black authors, in comparison to white counterparts, they just don't go through enough editing. They don't go through enough refinement to say, take this out. This font looks cheesy. This cover is horrible. Because the meat of the gift is there, but it's covered in such a way of rawness and purity. We need some refinement. So what you said, as a very well-established author, you've been doing this for years, for you to say that a third of what comes out of you is actually in print, I think is noteworthy. And my heart is hoping that the people watching this are listening, that everything you write does not have to go in your book. To really take that time with your work and be able to know, like, this was for me, and to be aware of who's going to be reading your book. There are pieces that I will perform that aren't in my book. And there are pieces that are in my book that I'm not going to perform in front of my mom and her church friends. Bro, it's not happening. It's just not happening, you know?
Hey.
And so it behooves Black authors to think about some of these things ahead of time. So that's why I'm telling you, like, don't stop. You were right where you needed to be for the kinds of people we have in our community. What are you working on now, Dwayne?
Oh, Lord.
Let me pull out the list, because I know it's a list. I'm gonna just take notes and line them up right here.
I got a document over here because I had to write it down. Oh my gosh. All right. So I'm words. All right. I'm working on a poetry compilation that's geared toward high school students, right? Because I'm silly, right? Just in my life, I'm real silly. I play video games. I be chilling. Like, that's my whole vibe.
Okay.
I try to counteract all of the dark with a whole lot of levity in my life, right? But I realized in the 3 compilations that I have now, all of them have some level of, like, either profanity or like a subject matter that might just be a little bit too hard for a school to purchase, right? And I've had schools buy like copies of One Color Kaleidoscope and like distribute them to the poetry club, stuff like that. But I want to release a compilation that I make available for students through the Poetry Out Loud program, where these kids are reading and reciting your poetry in a competitive format for like a national prize in scholarships, right? And I want to I have work that really fits that bill, but it's not all compiled together. So I'm in the process of editing that down and figuring out exactly which pieces, and a third of what's been written ends up in that type of thing, right? I think that may be the next release. In October, though, because I have a hard deadline for this, I'm releasing a book that documents 20 years of poetry hosts in the district. So I've been interviewing poetry hosts from 1998 to around now. So actually over 20 years. What am I talking about? Nonsense. So people like Delrika Andrews, Drew Anderson, Raquel Brown. We got newer hosts like Amuche, the poet, Ife, the artist, a bunch of different artists. Camilo, I need to interview him because he does a Spanish language open mic that's like really vibrant and dope. And like, so we're collecting the narratives because hosts have a very important role in the open mic and poetry scene that a lot of people don't really cherish and acknowledge. They're curators of this vibe, right? Yes. Curators of essentially the scene, right? And you can tell based on the era of the scene, like what level of curation was taking place, what level of host energy was being, manifested. And so, yeah, I'm super excited about these interviews. Most of that I've collected already have been really, really insightful. Reggie Kabiko talking about doing poetry in DC, going up to New York, doing theater and poetry, doing the New Eurekan Poetry Slam, and then coming back and running things in DC, talking about hosting open mics during the pandemic and shifting from in-person to virtual performances, the rise of busboys and poets, the separation between the DC Baltimore slam scenes, like so much is being covered in these interviews. That releases in October. It'll be releasing in a few different formats. The interviews will be released through a poetry podcast that I do called Poets Reading Poetry. And then the oral histories that I did for the interviews will be submitted to the People's Archive at MLK Library so that anybody has access when they're thinking about putting together a poetry event. They can look at all of these interviews and listen to all these interviews and really go through the experience with us. But then the book will have, it's one part like documenting this history and then one part a guide to hosting events. So hopefully it'll serve as a note to some that like, hey, maybe you don't need to host an event. Maybe you need to support others in the events that they already host. And then for those who are like really built for this to understand some different roles, like, yeah, you're the host. So the event is about you, but also it is not about you at all. Your role is to like, facilitate as comfortable and safe a space while also creating a space that is challenging for the audience without attacking the audience. Yes. And there's a real fine balance and like establishing that with an audience. Like there's so much that goes into it. So that's October. And then 2 other collections, one that's themed around love and one that's themed around grief. And they'll be shorter collections, but 2 sides of the same coin.
That is so dope. Dwayne, you just, y'all see what I'm saying? We ain't even started talking about the crocheting. We ain't even started talking about that.